With Syria's opposition willing to sit down with the government it wants to overthrow, could there be a small opening that could actually result in a lasting agreement? Well, joining us now is Peter Bechthold, Professor of Middle Eastern Affairs at Portland State University and an expert on the region. Thanks for joining us. Do you expect anything
Happy to be here.
Thank you, sir. Do you expect anything to come out of these talks?
I do, actually. I have great faith in Lakhdar Brahimi, the special mediator on Syria, who has tremendous credibility and a long history of success in very difficult negotiations elsewhere. And apparently today he succeeded in getting an agreement from those members of the rebel side who are present to talk to members of the government side, which is, that's a major step forward.
I'm just wondering, what is the motivation from the Syrian government side to attend these talks? When we hear U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry saying that, and he said it very forcefully, that Bashar al-Assad will not have a place in any future Syrian government. Is Bashar al-Assad going to send delegates to this meeting to negotiate basically his departure from government?
No, he would not, of course. And I must say I was really quite stunned when I heard Secretary Kerry speak in what I consider to be a very un-Kerry-like fashion. You know, as senator in the Foreign Relations Committee, as a former lawyer, he used language that I've never heard him use. It was an absolutist language. And I've been guessing, you know, who put him up to this, because it would indicate that the conference is doomed to failure. But maybe it was a requirement to get the opposition to come in the first place. So now that they are there, they can move forward. Bashar al-Assad has every incentive to continue because he has the upper hand in the fighting right now. And if I may add one more thing, you know, it is really not about Bashar al-Assad at all. The opposition is to the Ba'ath Party rule and even more so to Alawi rule in Syria. And the personality of Bashar al-Assad has very little to do with this. If he were to disappear, nothing would change in Syria.
Right, and we've also had some pushback from the Russians, a key supporter of the Syrian state. We had the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, and this is what he said: attempts to force upon countries of the Middle East and North Africa the recipes of reforms from outside and to stage social engineering experiments, those are his words, throw back the process of political and economic modernization. So this doesn't bode well if these two major powers sitting at these talks are so far apart themselves.
They are indeed, and I must say it makes Mr. Lavrov sound more diplomatic than our side, which I regret because of my admiration for Senator Kerry. But we have to remember that they each speak to multiple audiences, and I imagine that Kerry's objection to Iran being at the opening meeting and the demand that Bashar al-Assad is not a part of a solution, that this is in response to tremendous pressure from members of Congress who have been trying to undermine President Obama's Middle East policies. So I think that is a connection, and maybe it was necessary to say certain things in public and then negotiate privately in a very different fashion. That's what makes me a little bit hopeful.
Right, and of course earlier this week we had what was probably a bit of a diplomatic debacle with Iran being invited to the talks and then being disinvited. Was it a mistake for Iran to be excluded from these talks?
Oh, yes, definitely. And we have to remember that almost the entire world feels this way. You know, 40 nations were invited to the conference. Many of them have nothing to do with the Middle East. Yet Iran, which is not only a major player in the Middle East, but directly involved in a conflict, was disinvited on the grounds that they are supporting a government of President Assad. Well, the United States and Turkey and Saudi Arabia have been involved in a variety of ways on the side of the rebels. So how can you have two sets of rules for the participants in this conference?
Professor Bechthold, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.